Good morning, everyone. I posted my video yesterday on consciousness, where I talked about David Chalmers and Sam Harris's discussion on the topic, and specifically consciousness and epiphenomenalism. I wanted to add an additional point to this to deal with the issue of artificial intelligence, which comes up in the latter half of that discussion. There is significant concern and excitement within the scientific and computer science community about the development of artificial intelligence. There is a sense that with artificial intelligence developing, we will have access to fantastic devices of the future that will act in far more intelligent manners to improve our way of life, to improve the efficiency of everything from our food production and water purification to how easily we can wash our dishes. The central concern with this is, obviously with developing artificial intelligence, is the off chance of developing consciousness. And some people argue that you need to develop consciousness in order for an artificial intelligence to work properly. There are significant moral implications about creating new life. Any of you who are fans of Star Trek: The Next Generation will remember the quandary that befell Data when he was called into question whether or not he was property or person in A Measure of a Man. I think that's season 3, although don't quote me on that one exactly. Artificial intelligence being coded to be intelligent is fine. I mean, we have already many intelligent self-repairing robots that exist. Look at how production facilities in car manufacturers work. Some of these machines actually are entirely capable of repairing one another on the fly. They'll slow the production line down in order to fix. They can make assessments on how long the fix will take, so make adjustments to the speed of the production line and so forth. What is spoken about when we talk about artificial intelligence is almost sentience, the existence of a new being that exists in a silicon body rather than a biological body. I think when people try to tackle this, they do tackle it in a way of how do we code for? How do you build consciousness? How do you make something conscious? Sure, you can put everything together and it can have its own sensory inputs and it can have its own data integration techniques, and you can actually have it partitioned to work with specific problems and specific processors, and then have a general processor which kind of builds the entire experience into one. But will that actually develop consciousness? Honestly, and stemming from my opinions on epiphenomenalism, I don't think it will be possible for humans to code consciousness. I don't think it's going to be the slightest bit possible. And that's simply because of my views on epiphenomenalism. Consciousness did not develop in of itself. Consciousness is a byproduct of thinking, of experience. It is our awareness of experience and our willingness to modify those experiences, either by reflection or changing behavior. Consciousness, being the unique experience to one, may very well turn out to be an issue that has already befallen some machines. But because there is no system which the machine can feed back to you beyond a simple log file readout on how your C# failed, there is no way to tell whether or not that machine is actually conscious. Brings me around to the point I wanted to make in this very brief video. Consciousness, just as it happened in animals, will happen in machines the same way. We will not willfully or intentionally code for intelligence. We will be working on some other project in the pursuit of approaching that, but we will suddenly find ourselves with a simplistic conscious being, maybe consciousness on the level that we would arguably recognize in that of a rat, or maybe even as low as a snake. This will happen, and forgive the terminology, but organically. It'll happen from the bottom up, unintentionally. As long as the system being designed allows for some degree of a data integration and prediction making, it will be possible that the system will have a degree of consciousness and experience, because it'll be able to take particular phenomena and weigh it against past phenomena and make a judgment on the current phenomena which it is experiencing. That, in essence, will be the consciousness of that machine. This, in all likelihood, is happening at 1 trillion times a second within Google, with how the system continually reevaluates through its algorithms relevancy of search terms. Is it consciousness that we would recognize in humans? No, not at all. Is it a walking, thinking, autonomous being? No, not at all. But you could also say that no human, in a sense, is a walking, autonomous being, because we rely upon more cells that our body possesses of bacteria to help regulate our digestive system, to help protect our skin, to ensure our hair stays reasonably bug-free. There's bacteria covering our body and the inside of it. We are, in effect, a walking donut that ensures our survival. We are not autonomous simply because we are human. Can this actually be said the same for machines? Possibly. So, in brief conclusion here, on consciousness, my previous video, which is illustrated on the screen now, is talking about epiphenomenalism and how consciousness, in essence, is a byproduct of thinking. We think, we act, we experience, we weigh our experiences and actions to previous events to the best of our ability. The system is full of flaws, obviously being biological, but it is remarkably built. Forgive the term, I don't think it was built. Anyways, it was remarkably evolved. But consciousness did not evolve in of itself, and we will not see consciousness willfully developed in machines. It will be an inherent byproduct of machines learning to think via algorithms. We will not know when it'll happen, because we will not have an output system that will give us the ability to have an insight into the thinking of those machines in that regard. Yes, we have log files. Yes, we have the ability to see how the machine is processing, but we won't ever have the ability, right now at least, to have that machine turn around and say, this is dumb, or I'm bored, or any other type of thing that would relate to the experience of being that machine. Epiphenomenalism, artificial intelligence, and why people have some concern about it. I want to address this briefly here. If you're out of time, that's fantastic. Come back to this part later. Consider this part 2. Let's talk about why some people are very concerned about artificial intelligence becoming existent. There's a couple schools of thought on it. One is artificial intelligence, as long as we follow the core rules of robotics, will never be a problem. Robots will be effectively slaves to humans. They will have similar rights, similar degrees of autonomy, but in their very existence, because we can put in particular safeguards stronger than moral imperatives which have evolved within humans, that any type of machine or autonomous robot will never bring harm to a human. That's the positive end. The next end is leaping the uncanny valley. Once we have robots that are past the uncanny valley, where they, let me take a step back. The uncanny valley is a description of a line graph, in effect, that charts realness of a machine on the y-axis, and along the x-axis is the realness of the machine, and the y-axis is our acceptance that that machine is lifelike. The more real the machine looks, the more lifelike we will believe it to be, more human we'll believe it to be. But as you approach human, the most human thing being a human, there's a little step about 10% away from the goal where the chart, rather than going on a nice steady upslope, suddenly drops, plummets, before coming sharply up again. This is called the uncanny valley. As we approach near perfect looking humans, think of some of these sex dolls that come out now that have been joked about and maligned for probably past decade. A lot of them look very lifelike, although there's something about them. There's something in your mind when you look at it, more than a second, that you go, that's not real. Despite it being maybe perfectly posed in a photograph with another human being, you can look and you would go, there's something off about that. There's no real explanation as to why. Some people believe that our facial recognition actually is able, through visual perception, to integrate very, very minute changes in facial expression by the millisecond, which allows us to be certain that we are dealing with someone who's real. That's only one school, but I won't go into much more detail on it. So anyways, as we leap that uncanny valley, we now have machines, not humans, existing within a human society that may, while run by artificial intelligence, pose a variety of threats to human beings. If you want to be political right now, there's a concern about jobs. If you can have a human-like server, why would you ever hire a human server when you can have a human-like one that does everything perfectly, knows exactly the menu, knows exactly, as soon as she or it or whatever you want to characterize it, hears the order from the customer, it is immediately printed out in the kitchen and will be perfectly performed by a robot chef also. We remove humans from the calculation beyond the ones that are eating. No breaks, no tips, no pay. Fantastic. You can have these robots. So there's that concern there. That's, in effect, a tertiary concern. That's way down the list. Going up the list a little bit, though, we run into the Space Odyssey/Terminator problem, and that's machines that are autonomous, thinking, and capable of some degree of emotion. In other words, a secondary reflection of experience, that have not, to not put it too lightly, evolved well enough to be able to interact with humans. So this charting here, if you want to just take a moment to visualize this, as we move up in computer coding finesse, technicality, we get closer to being able to create, we'll say, a true human in a machine. But in that evolution, as we go and we work through the code and we put our best minds to this task, we will not be able to go from effectively a calculator to a human in a single step. Just like we see in the animal kingdom, there are intermediary steps between bacteria and human. Bacteria being the most basic of calculators in nature, all the way up to human beings being the most complex. So how do we get from point A to point D in computer science? You need to put in a couple points in between. If you have a human past the uncanny valley, so not a human, but a machine that's past the uncanny valley, that you will mistake as a human. But in effect, the AI will have the similar reproductive drives, you could say. In other words, it has some desire for kind to be around beyond humans, but has a reptilian level of thinking that is no strong emotional attachment to others, very basal, wants simple comforts, protections, shelter, food, but doesn't or isn't able to judge intentions and will see minor slights as threats, that will mean you have these machines, likely significantly stronger, faster, more durable than humans, able to, in our own fault, act out in malicious manners towards humans because of poor coding that built poor rationalities for that machine. That is a huge concern for a lot of people. That's the Terminator slash Mr. Space Odyssey 2001 problem, where you have intelligent machines that act out against humans because they are not sophisticated enough to be pristine artificial intelligence that can possess the empathy towards humans. And that's simply because in an evolutionary timescale of it, it'll be more of the reptilian grade than a mammalian grade mind. Okay, the top. And I think this has probably been the one, now I could be wrong, I might be confusing a few of the contributors to this, but I believe this is Stephen Hawking's concern. Machines are able to interface with other machines in a way humans cannot interface with other humans. At most, and coming from my counseling background, me interfacing with another human requires a consciousness, an experience from another person to be related to me with all of their biases, with all of their colorings, with their limited language and sometimes laconic responses, for me to then interpret, work out based upon particular psychological paradigms, and then convey back in a manner that allows the patient or client to understand their actions in a different context that will hopefully move them towards maladaptive strategies for their particular experience to positive, proactive strategies for their experience. That's probably the best we can do in a conscious level. Obviously, we interface with other humans in a variety of ways. Socially, there's a lot of social norms of handshakes, hugging, cheek kisses. There's human sexual behavior, which is a way to interface with another person. But none of these here allow truly an inside, actual, entire look into the existence of that human being. Going to machines, however, if a machine can look at the code of another machine, it can know exactly what that machine is about, how that machine runs, and how, in effect, to use that machine. If you have just even a small conglomerate of thinking, intelligent, artificially intelligent minds which work in concert with one another. So we're not just talking about the super processors that we currently possess. I'm talking about magnitudes of order more intelligent than what we currently possess. Able to interface, thanks to the internet, any machine at the end of the tendrils of cords, or within Wi-Fi range, you could have a catastrophic event on your hands given a failure of only one of those minds. One slip, one wrong bit of code, one ability for the machine to begin to recode itself, and you could put yourself in a position as a society where those machines can act out in manners of their own self-interest. So there is no inherent malicious intent towards humans, but out of this machine's self-interest that we poorly implemented into it, it will cause harm to other human beings. And that harm caused likely could be irreversible. I'm not talking about full matrix blown scenario here where humans in effect develop machines to the point where they use humans as batteries. I'm not going to that degree. What I am saying, however, is a machine that may, say, out of its own self-preservation, interface with, say, a sprinkler control system to make sure that it does not get wet. Because if it were to get wet, its security would be at risk. Of course, if a building begins to burn, the rest of the humans are going to want to survive, and those water suppression systems are going to be the difference between those humans surviving and not. So the machine, in an act of its own self-preservation, overrides the sprinkler system. It does not get wet, but now the building burns so aggressively and quickly that the humans inside end up dying. It didn't mean to kill the humans. It was only preserving itself. This is a very likely byproduct of our development of human or of artificial intelligence in a human manner. Artificial intelligence and consciousness they are inevitably going to overlap if they haven't already. Remember, how to put it? I want to wrap this up here. I'm just trying to think about the best way to put it. In an epiphenomenalistic way, we have no ability to determine the potential outcomes of how consciousness can develop. If consciousness was a natural-born thing, something that developed independently of the rest of the systems, we could have better predictive models which would allow us to fully understand consciousness in humans, or at least get far closer than we currently are, to turn around and then work our way towards implementing that in an artificial mind. We don't, though. And epiphenomenalism just says that it is a byproduct of the process of thinking. And frankly, machines which already engage in that kind of thinking process may have some degree of consciousness that is not able to be relayed to us. And in our pursuit of developing artificial intelligence, we will likely inadvertently develop consciousness within them. It will be strange, highly unlikely for many years to come to have a high-grade artificial intelligence, but this view of mine will hopefully bring some light on some of the concerns that can come out of development of artificial intelligence and how consciousness and machines relate to one another. I hope you've enjoyed this video. As always, thank you for watching. As long as I keep having these thoughts, I'll keep putting these low-quality videos out. If you have any comments, please post them below. If you have anything to add, please share. Come follow me on Twitter at Nrokchi, N-R-O-K-C-H-I. I look forward to talking to some of you. I love the idea of exchanging ideas where I could potentially be wrong, or in areas that you think you could help me improve my line of thinking. So again, thank you for watching, and we'll talk soon.